Book 6. 2. Just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. Cold or warm. Tired or well rested. Despised or honored. Dying. Or busy with other assignments. Because dying, too, is one of our assignments in life. There as well, to do what needs doing. 3. Look inward. Don't let the true nature or value of anything elude you. 6. The best revenge is not to be like that. 7. To move from one unselfish action to another with God in mind. Only there, delight and stillness. 8. The mind is that which is roused and directed by itself. It makes of itself what it chooses. It makes what it chooses of its own experience. 10. Mixture, interaction, dispersal. Or, 2. Unity, order, design. Suppose, why would I want to live in disorder and confusion? Why would I care about anything except the eventual dust to dust? And why would I feel any anxiety? Dispersal is certain, whatever I do. Or suppose, 2. Reverence. Serenity. Faith in the power responsible. 11. When Jared, unavoidably, by circumstances, revert at once to yourself, and don't lose the rhythm more than you can help. 12. If you had a stepmother and a real mother, you would pay your respects to your stepmother, yes. But it's your real mother you'd go home to. The court. And philosophy, keep returning to it, to rest in its embrace. It's all that makes the court and you endurable. 13. Like seeing roasted meat and other dishes in front of you and suddenly realizing, this is a dead fish. A dead bird. A dead pig. Perceptions like that latching onto things and piercing through them, so we see what they really are. That's what we need to do all the time all through our lives when things lay claim to our trust, to lay them bare and see how pointless they are, to strip away the legend that encrusts them. Pride is a master of deception. When you think you're occupied in the weightiest business, that's when he has you in his spell. Compare crates on xenocrates. 14. Things ordinary people are impressed by fall into the categories of things that are held together by simple physics, like stones or wood, or by natural growth, figs, vines, olives. Those admired by more advanced minds are held together by a living soul, flocks of sheep, herds of cows. Still more sophisticated people admire what is guided by a rational mind, not the universal mind, but one admired for its technical knowledge, or for some other skill. But those who revere that other mind, the one we all share as humans and as citizens, aren't interested in other things. Their focus is on the state of their own minds, to avoid all selfishness and illogic, and to work with others to achieve that goal. 15. Some things are rushing into existence, others out of it. Some of what now exists is already gone. Change and flux constantly remake the world, just as the incessant progression of time remakes eternity. And life itself, like the decoction of blood, the drawing in of air. 16. What is it in ourselves that we should prize? Not just transpiration, even plants do that. Or respiration, even beasts and wild animals breathe. Or being struck by passing thoughts. Or jerked like a puppet by your own impulses. Or moving in herds. Or eating, and relieving yourself afterwards. Then what is to be prized? An audience clapping? No. I think it's this, to do, and not do, what we were designed for. That's the goal of all trades, all arts, and what each of them aims at, that the thing they create should do what it was designed to do. So that's what we should prize. Hold on to that, and you won't be tempted to aim at anything else. And if you can't stop prizing a lot of other things, then you'll never be free, independent, imperturbable. Because you'll always be envious and jealous, afraid that people might come and take it all away from you. People who need those things are bound to be a mess and bound to take out their frustrations on the gods. Whereas to respect your own mind, to prize it, will leave you satisfied with your own self, well integrated into your community and in tune with the gods as well, embracing what they allot you, and what they ordain. 17. The motion of virtue is different, deeper. It moves at a steady pace on a road hard to discern, and always forward. 18. The way people behave. They refuse to admire their contemporaries, the people whose lives they share. No, but to be admired by posterity, people they've never met and never will. That's what they set their hearts on. You might as well be upset at not being a hero to your great-grandfather. 19. Not to assume it's impossible because you find it hard. But to recognize that if it's humanly possible, you can do it too. 20. We need to excuse what our sparring partners do, and just keep our distance without suspicion or hatred. 21. If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone. What harms us is to persist in self-deceit and ignorance. 23. When you deal with irrational animals, with things and circumstances, be generous and straightforward. You are rational, they are not. When you deal with fellow human beings, behave as one. They share in the logos. And invoke the gods regardless. 25 Think how much is going on inside you every second in your soul, in your body. Why should it astonish you that so much more everything that happens in that all-embracing unity, the world is happening at the same time? 26. Remember your responsibilities can be broken down into individual parts as well. Concentrate on those, and finish the job methodically without getting stirred up or meeting anger with anger. 27 How cruel to forbid people to want what they think is good for them. And yet that's just what you won't let them do when you get angry at their misbehavior. They're drawn toward what they think is good for them. But it's not good for them. Then show them that. Prove it to them. Instead of losing your temper. 28 Death. The end of sense perception, of being controlled by our emotions, of mental activity, of enslavement to our bodies. 29 Disgraceful, for the soul to give up when the body is still going strong. 30 To escape imperialization, that indelible stain. It happens. Make sure you remain straightforward, upright, reverent, serious, unadorned, an ally of justice, pious, kind, affectionate, and doing your duty with a will. Fight to be the person philosophy tried to make you. The only rewards of our existence here are an unstained character and unselfish acts. Take Antoninus as your model, always. His energy in doing what was rational. His steadiness in any situation. His gentleness. His modesty. And how he never let things go before he was sure he had examined them thoroughly, understood them perfectly. The way he put up with unfair criticism, without returning it. Not prone to backbiting, or cowardice, or jealousy, or empty rhetoric. Content with the basics in living quarters, bedding, clothes, food. How hard he worked, how much he put up with. His constancy and reliability as a friend. His tolerance of people who openly questioned his views and his delight at seeing his ideas improved on. His piety. So that when your time comes, your conscience will be as clear as his. 31 Awaken, return to yourself. Now, no longer asleep, knowing they were only dreams, clear-headed again, treat everything around you as a dream. 32 I am composed of a body and a soul. Things that happen to the body are meaningless. It cannot discriminate among them. Nothing has meaning to my mind except its own actions, which are within its own control. And it's only the immediate ones that matter. Its past and future actions too are meaningless. 33 For a human being to feel stress is normal if he's living a normal human life. And if it's normal, how can it be bad? 36 Asia and Europe, distant recesses of the universe. The ocean, a drop of water. The present, a split second in eternity. Minuscule, transitory, insignificant. 36a. Everything derives from it, that universal mind, either as effect or consequence. The poisonous substances, and every harmful thing, are byproducts of the good and beautiful. So don't look at them as alien to what you revere, but focus on the source that all things spring from. 37 If you've seen the present, then you've seen everything as it's been since the beginning, as it will be forever. The same substance, the same form. All of it. 38 Keep reminding yourself of the way things are connected, of their relatedness. All things are implicated in one another and in sympathy with each other. This event is the consequence of some other one. Things push and pull on each other, and breathe together, and are one. 39 The things ordained for you, teach yourself to be at one with those. And the people who share them with you, treat them with love. With real love. 40 Implements, tools, equipment. If they do what they were designed for, then they work. Even if the person who designed them is miles away. But with naturally occurring things, the force that designed them is present within them and remains there. Which is why we owe it special reverence, with the recognition that if you live and act as it dictates, then everything in you is intelligently ordered. Just as everything in the world is. 41 You take things you don't control and define them as good or bad. And so of course when the bad things happen, or the good ones don't, you blame the gods and feel hatred for the people responsible or those you decide to make responsible. Much of our bad behavior stems from trying to apply those criteria. If we limited good and bad to our own actions, we'd have no call to challenge God, or to treat other people as enemies. 42 All of us are working on the same project. Some consciously, with understanding, some without knowing it. I think this is what Heraclitus meant when he said that those who sleep are also hard at work, that they too collaborate in what happens. And those who complain and try to obstruct and thwart things, they help as much as anyone. The world needs them as well. So make up your mind who you'll choose to work with. The force that directs all things will make good use of you regardless, will put you on its payroll and set you to work. But make sure it's not the job Chrysippus speaks of, the bad line in the play, put there for laughs. 44 If the gods have made decisions about me and the things that happen to me, then they were good decisions. It's hard to picture a god who makes bad ones. And why would they expend their energies on causing me harm? What good would it do them or the world, which is their primary concern? And if they haven't made decisions about me as an individual, they certainly have about the general welfare. And anything that follows from that is something I have to welcome and embrace. And if they make no decisions about anything, and it's blasphemous even to think so, because if so, then let's stop sacrificing, praying, swearing oaths, and doing all the other things we do, believing the whole time that the gods are right here with us, if they decide nothing about our lives. Well, I can still make decisions. Can still consider what it's to my benefit to do. And what benefits anyone is to do what his own nature requires. And mine is rational. Rational and civic. My city and state are Rome as Antoninus. But as a human being? The world. So for me, good can only mean what's good for both communities. 45 Whatever happens to you is for the good of the world. That would be enough right there. But if you look closely, you'll generally notice something else as well. Whatever happens to a single person is for the good of others. 46 Just as the arena and the other spectacles weary you, you've seen them all before, and the repetition grates on your nerves, so too with life. The same things, the same causes, on all sides. How much longer? 47 Keep this constantly in mind, that all sorts of people have died. We have to go there too, where all of them have already gone. The eloquent and the wise Heraclitus, Pythagoras, Socrates. The heroes of old, the soldiers and kings who followed them. Eudoxus, Hipparchus, Archimedes. The smart, the generous, the hard-working, the cunning, the selfish. And even Menippus and his cohorts, who laughed at the whole brief, fragile business. And what harm does it do them? Or the others, either the ones whose names we don't even know. The only thing that isn't worthless, to live this life out truthfully and rightly. And be patient with those who don't. 48. When you need encouragement, think of the qualities the people around you have, this one's energy, that one's modesty, another's generosity, and so on. Nothing is as encouraging as when virtues are visibly embodied in the people around us, when we're practically showered with them. It's good to keep this in mind. 49. It doesn't bother you that you weigh only X or Y pounds and not 300. Why should it bother you that you have only X or Y years to live and not more? You accept the limits placed on your body. Accept those placed on your time. 50 Do your best to convince them. But act on your own, if justice requires it. If met with force, then fall back on acceptance and peaceability. Use the setback to practice other virtues. Remember that our efforts are subject to circumstances. You weren't aiming to do the impossible. Aiming to do what, then? To try. And you succeeded. What you set out to do is accomplished. 51 Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Self-indulgence means tying it to the things that happen to you. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. 52 You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Things can't shape our decisions by themselves. 53 Practice really hearing what people say. Do your best to get inside their minds. 54 What injures the hive injures the bee. 57 Honey tastes bitter to a man with jaundice. People with rabies are terrified of water. And a child's idea of beauty is a ball. Why does that upset you? Do you think falsehood is less powerful than bile or a rabid dog? 59 The people they want to ingratiate themselves with, and the results, and the things they do in the process. How quickly it will all be erased by time. How much has been erased already? Book 7. 1 Evil, the same old thing. 2 You cannot quench understanding unless you put out the insights that compose it. But you can rekindle those at will, like glowing coals. I can control my thoughts as necessary, then how can I be troubled? What is outside my mind means nothing to it. You can return to life. Look at things as you did before. And life returns. 3 We need to practice acceptance. Without disdain. But remembering that our own worth is measured by what we devote our energy to. 4 Focus on what is said when you speak and on what results from each action. Know what the one aims at, and what the other means. 5 Is my intellect up to this? If so, then I'll put it to work, like a tool provided by nature. And if it isn't, then I'll turn the job over to someone who can do better unless I have no choice. Or I do the best I can with it, and collaborate with whoever can make use of it, to do what the community needs done. Because whatever I do alone or with others can aim at one thing only, what squares with those requirements. 7 Don't be ashamed to need help. Like a soldier storming a wall, you have a mission to accomplish. And if you've been wounded and you need a comrade to pull you up, so what? 8 Forget the future. When and if it comes, you'll have the same resources to draw on the same logos. 9 Everything is interwoven, and the web is holy, none of its parts are unconnected. They are composed harmoniously, and together they compose the world. One world, made up of all things. One divinity, present in them all. One substance and one law, the logos that all rational beings share. And one truth. If this is indeed the culmination of one process, beings who share the same birth, the same logos. 12 straight, not straightened. 13 What is rational in different beings is related, like the individual limbs of a single being, and meant to function as a unit. This will be clearer to you if you remind yourself, I am a single limb, melos, of a larger body, a rational one. Or you could say a part, miros, only a letter's difference. But then you're not really embracing other people. Helping them isn't yet its own reward. You're still seeing it only as the right thing to do. You don't yet realize who you're really helping. 14 Let it happen, if it wants, to whatever it can happen to. And what's affected can complain about it if it wants. It doesn't hurt me unless I interpret its happening as harmful to me. I can choose not to. 15 No matter what anyone says or does, my task is to be good. 16 The mind doesn't get in its own way. It doesn't frighten itself into desires. If other things can scare or hurt it, let them, it won't go down that road on the basis of its own perceptions. Let the body avoid discomfort, if it can, and if it feels it, say so. But the soul is what feels fear and pain, and what conceives of them in the first place, and it suffers nothing. Because it will never conclude that it has. The mind in itself has no needs, except for those it creates itself. Is undisturbed, except for its own disturbances. Knows no obstructions, except those from within. 17 Well-being is good luck, or good character. 17a. But what are you doing here, perceptions? Get back to where you came from, and good riddance. I don't need you. Yes, I know, it was only force of habit that brought you. No, I'm not angry with you. Just go away. 18. Frightened of change? But what can exist without it? What's closer to nature's heart? Can you take a hot bath and leave the firewood as it was? Eat food without transforming it? Can any vital process take place without something being changed? Can't you see? It's just the same with you and just as vital to nature. 20 My only fear is doing something contrary to human nature, the wrong thing, the wrong way, or at the wrong time. 21 Close to forgetting it all, close to being forgotten. 22 To feel affection for people even when they make mistakes is uniquely human. You can do it, if you simply recognize, that they're human too, that they act out of ignorance, against their will, and that you'll both be dead before long. And, above all, that they haven't really hurt you. They haven't diminished your ability to choose. 24 Anger in the face is unnatural. Or in the end is put out for good, so that it can't be rekindled. Try to conclude its unnaturalness from that. If even the consciousness of acting badly has gone, why go on living? 26 When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come of it. If you understand that, you'll feel sympathy rather than outrage or anger. Your sense of good and evil may be the same as theirs, or near it, in which case you have to excuse them. Or your sense of good and evil may differ from theirs. In which case they're misguided and deserve your compassion. Is that so hard? 27 Treat what you don't have as non-existent. Look at what you have, the things you value most, and think of how much you'd crave them if you didn't have them. But be careful. Don't feel such satisfaction that you start to overvalue them that it would upset you to lose them. 28 Self-contraction, the mind's requirements are satisfied by doing what we should, and by the calm it brings us. 29 Discard your misperceptions. Stop being jerked like a puppet. Limit yourself to the present. Understand what happens to you, to others. Analyze what exists, break it all down, material and cause. Anticipate your final hours. Other people's mistakes? Leave them to their makers. 30 To direct your thoughts to what is said. To focus the mind on what happens and what makes it happen. 31 Wash yourself clean. With simplicity, with humility, with indifference to everything but right and wrong. Care for other human beings. Follow God. 31a. All are relative, it's been said, and in reality only atoms. It's enough to remember the first half, all are relative. Which is little enough. 33 On pain. Unendurable pain brings its own end with it. Chronic pain is always endurable, the intelligence maintains serenity by cutting itself off from the body, the mind remains undiminished. And the parts that pain affects, let them speak for themselves, if they can. 34 On ambition. How their minds work, the things they long for and fear. Events like piles of sand, drift upon drift, each one soon hidden by the next. 35 If his mind is filled with nobility, with a grasp of all time, all existence, do you think our human life will mean much to him at all? How could it, he said. Or death be very frightening? Not in the least. 36 Kingship, to earn a bad reputation by good deeds. 38 And why should we feel anger at the world? As if the world would notice. 45 The spot where a person decides to station himself, or wherever his commanding officer stations him, well, I think that's where he ought to take his stand and face the enemy, and not worry about being killed, or about anything but doing his duty. 46 But, my good friend, consider the possibility that nobility and virtue are not synonymous with the loss or preservation of one's life. No one can escape his fate, and turn his attention to how he can best live the life before him. 48 Plato has it right. If you want to talk about people, you need to look down on the earth from above. Herds, armies, farms, weddings, divorces, births, deaths, noisy courtrooms, desert places, all the foreign peoples, holidays, days of mourning, market days. All mixed together, a harmony of opposites. 49 Look at the past empire succeeding empire, and from that, extrapolate the future, the same thing. No escape from the rhythm of events. Which is why observing life for 40 years is as good as 1,000. Would you really see anything new? 50. Earth's offspring back to earth. But all that's born of heaven, to heaven returns again. Either that or the cluster of atoms pulls apart, and one way or another the insensible elements disperse. 51. With food and drink and magic spells. Seeking some novel way to frustrate death. 51a. To labor cheerfully and so endure the wind that blows from heaven. 52 A better wrestler. But not a better citizen, a better person, a better resource in tight places, a better forgiver of faults. 53 Wherever something can be done as the logos shared by gods and men dictates, there all is in order. Where there is profit because our effort is productive, because it advances in step with our nature, there we have nothing to fear. 54 Everywhere, at each moment, you have the option to accept this event with humility, to treat this person as he should be treated, to approach this thought with care, so that nothing irrational creeps in. 55 Don't pay attention to other people's minds. Look straight ahead, where nature is leading you, nature in general, through the things that happen to you, and your own nature, through your own actions. Everything has to do what it was made for. Lower things exist for the sake of higher ones, and higher things for one another. Now, the main thing we were made for is to work with others. Secondly, to resist our body's urges. Because things driven by logos, by thought, have the capacity for detachment to resist impulses and sensations, both of which are merely corporeal. Thought seeks to be their master, not their subject. And so it should, they were created for its use. And the third thing is to avoid rashness and credulity. The mind that grasps this and steers straight ahead should be able to hold its own. 56 Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. 57 To love only what happens, what was destined. No greater harmony. 58 In all that happens, keep before your eyes those who experienced it before you, and felt shock and outrage and resentment at it. And now where are they? Nowhere. Is that what you want to be like? Instead of avoiding all these distracting assaults, leaving the alarms and flight to others, and concentrating on what you can do with it all? Because you can use it, treat it as raw material. Just pay attention, and resolve to live up to your own expectations. In everything. And when faced with a choice, remember, our business is with things that really matter. 59 Dig deep, the water goodness is down there. And as long as you keep digging, it will keep bubbling up. 60 What the body needs is stability. To be impervious to jolts in all it is and does. The cohesiveness and beauty that intelligence lends to the face, that's what the body needs. But it should come without effort. 61 Not a dancer but a wrestler, waiting, poised, and dug in, for sudden assaults. 62 Look at who they really are, the people whose approval you long for, and what their minds are really like. Then you won't blame the ones who make mistakes they can't help, and you won't feel a need for their approval. You will have seen the sources of both their judgments and their actions. 63 Against our will, our souls are cut off from truth. Truth, yes, and justice, self-control, kindness. These will make you more patient with other people. 64 4 times when you feel pain, see that it doesn't disgrace you, or degrade your intelligence, doesn't keep it from acting rationally or unselfishly. And in most cases what Epicurus said should help, that pain is neither unbearable nor unending, as long as you keep in mind its limits and don't magnify them in your imagination. And keep in mind too that pain often comes in disguise as drowsiness, fever, loss of appetite. When you're bothered by things like that, remind yourself, I'm giving in to pain. 65 Take care that you don't treat inhumanity as it treats human beings. 66 What matters is what kind of soul he had. Whether he was satisfied to treat men with justice and the gods with reverence, and didn't lose his temper unpredictably at evil done by others, didn't make himself the slave of other people's ignorance, didn't treat anything that nature did as abnormal, or put up with it as an unbearable imposition, didn't put his mind in his body's keeping. 67. Nature did not blend things so inextricably that you can't draw your own boundaries, place your own well-being in your own hands. It's quite possible to be a good man without anyone realizing it. And this too, you don't need much to live happily. And just because you've abandoned your hopes of becoming a great thinker or scientist, don't give up on attaining freedom, achieving humility, serving others, obeying God. 68. To live life in peace, immune to all compulsion. Let them scream whatever they want. How would any of that stop you from keeping your mind calm, reliably sizing up what's around you and ready to make good use of whatever happens? So that judgment can look the event in the eye and say, this is what you really are, regardless of what you may look like. While adaptability adds, you're just what I was looking for. Because to me the present is a chance for the exercise of rational virtue, civic virtue, in short, the art that men share with gods. Both treat whatever happens as wholly natural, not novel or hard to deal with, but familiar and easily handled. 69. Perfection of character, to live your last day, every day, without frenzy, or sloth, or pretense. 70. The gods live forever and yet they don't seem annoyed at having to put up with human beings and their behavior throughout eternity. And not only put up with but actively care for them. And you on the verge of death you still refuse to care for them, although you're one of them yourself. 71. It's silly to try to escape other people's faults. They are inescapable. Just try to escape your own. 72. Whenever the force that makes us rational and social encounters something that is neither, then it can reasonably regard it as inferior. 73. You've given aid and they've received it. And yet, like an idiot, you keep holding out for more, to be credited with a good deed, to be repaid in kind. Why? 74. No one objects to what is useful to him. To be of use to others is natural. Then don't object to what is useful to you being of use. 75. Nature willed the creation of the world. Either all that exists follows logically, or even those things to which the world's intelligence most directs its will are completely random. A source of serenity in more situations than one. Book 8. One another encouragement to humility. You can't claim to have lived your life as a philosopher to have a reputation as a philosopher. And your position is an obstacle as well. Now forget what they think of you. Be satisfied if you can live the rest of your life, however short, as your nature demands. Focus on that, and don't let anything distract you. You've wandered all over and finally realized that you never found what you were after, how to live. Not in syllogisms, not in money, or fame, or self-indulgence. Nowhere. Then where is it to be found? In doing what human nature requires. How? Through first principles. Which should govern your intentions and your actions. What principles? Those to do with good and evil. That nothing is good except what leads to fairness, and self-control, and courage, and free will. And nothing bad except what does the opposite. 2. For every action, ask, how does it affect me? Could I change my mind about it? But soon I'll be dead, and the slate's empty. So this is the only question, is it the action of a responsible being, part of society, and subject to the same decrees as God? 3. Alexander and Caesar and Pompey. Compared with Diogenes, Heraclitus, Socrates. The philosophers knew the what, the why, the how. Their minds were their own. The others. Nothing but anxiety and enslavement. 4. You can hold your breath until you turn blue, but they'll still go on doing it. 5. The first step, don't be anxious. Nature controls it all. And before long you'll be no one, nowhere. The second step, concentrate on what you have to do. Fix your eyes on it. Remind yourself that your task is to be a good human being, remind yourself what nature demands of people. Then do it, without hesitation, and speak the truth as you see it. But with kindness. With humility. Without hypocrisy. 6. Nature's job, to shift things elsewhere, to transform them, to pick them up and move them here and there. Constant alteration. But not to worry, there's nothing new here. Everything is familiar. Even the proportions are unchanged. 7. Nature of any kind thrives on forward progress. And progress for a rational mind means not accepting falsehood or uncertainty in its perceptions, making unselfish actions its only aim, seeking and shunning only the things it has control over, embracing what nature demands of it, the nature in which it participates, as the leaf's nature does in the trees. Except that the nature shared by the leaf is without consciousness or reason, and subject to impediments. Whereas that shared by human beings is without impediments, and rational, and just, since it allots to each and everything an equal and proportionate share of time, being, purpose, action, chance. Examine it closely. Not whether they're identical point by point, but in the aggregate, this weighed against that. 8. No time for reading. For controlling your arrogance, yes. For overcoming pain and pleasure, yes. For outgrowing ambition, yes. For not feeling anger at stupid and unpleasant people even for caring about them for that, yes. 9. Don't be overheard complaining about life at court. Not even to yourself. 10. Remorse is annoyance at yourself for having passed up something that's to your benefit. But if it's to your benefit it must be good, something a truly good person would be concerned about. But no truly good person would feel remorse at passing up pleasure. So it cannot be to your benefit, or good. 12. When you have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, remember that your defining characteristic, what defines a human being, is to work with others. And it's the characteristic activity that's the more natural one, more innate and more satisfying. 13. Apply them constantly, to everything that happens, physics, ethics, logic. 14. When you have to deal with someone, ask yourself, what does he mean by good and bad? If he thinks X or Y about pleasure and pain, and what produces them, about fame and disgrace, about death and life, then it shouldn't shock or surprise you when he does X or Y. 16. Remember that to change your mind and to accept correction are free acts too. The action is yours, based on your own will, your own decision and your own mind. 17. If it's in your control, why do you do it? If it's in someone else's, then who are you blaming? Atoms? The gods? Stupid either way. Blame no one. Set people straight, if you can. If not, just repair the damage. And suppose you can't do that either. Then where does blaming people get you? No pointless actions. 19. Everything is here for a purpose, from horses to vine shoots. What's surprising about that? Even the sun will tell you, I have a purpose, and the other gods as well. And why were you born? For pleasure? See if that answer will stand up to questioning. 20. Nature is like someone throwing a ball in the air, gauging its rise and arc and where it will fall. And what does the ball gain as it flies upward? Or lose when it plummets to earth? 21. They all die soon, praiser and praised, rememberer and remembered. Remembered in these parts or in a corner of them. Even there they don't all agree with each other, or even with themselves. And the whole earth a mere point in space. 22. Stick to what's in front of you, idea, action, utterance. 22a. This is what you deserve. You could be good today. But instead you choose tomorrow. 25. Short-lived creatures, long dead. Some of them not remembered at all, some become legends, some lost even to legend. So remember, your components will be scattered too, the life within you quenched. Or marching orders and another posting. 26. Joy for humans lies in human actions. Human actions, kindness to others, contempt for the senses, the interrogation of appearances, observation of nature and of events in nature. 27. 3. Relationships. I with the body you inhabit. 2. With the divine, the cause of everything in all things. 3. With the people around you. 28. Either pain affects the body, which is the body's problem, or it affects the soul. But the soul can choose not to be affected, preserving its own serenity, its own tranquility. All our decisions, urges, desires, aversions lie within. No evil can touch them. 29. To erase false perceptions, tell yourself, I have it in me to keep my soul from evil, lust and all confusion. To see things as they are and treat them as they deserve. Don't overlook this innate ability. 30. To speak to any and air in the right tone, without being overbearing. To choose the right words. 31. That line they write on tombs, last surviving descendant. Consider their ancestors' anxiety that there be a successor. But someone has to be the last. There, too, the death of a whole house. 32. You have to assemble your life yourself, action by action. And be satisfied if each one achieves its goal, as far as it can. No one can keep that from happening. But there are external obstacles. Not to behaving with justice, self-control, and good sense. Well, but perhaps to some more concrete action. But if you accept the obstacle and work with what you're given, an alternative will present itself, another piece of what you're trying to assemble. Action by action. 33. To accept it without arrogance, to let it go with indifference. 34. Have you ever seen a severed hand or foot, or a decapitated head, just lying somewhere far away from the body it belonged to? That's what we do to ourselves, or try to, when we rebel against what happens to us, when we segregate ourselves. Or when we do something selfish. But you can reattach yourself. A privilege God has granted to no other part of no other whole to be separated, cut away, and reunited. But look how He's singled us out. He's allowed us not to be broken off in the first place, and when we are, He's allowed us to return, to graft ourselves back on, and take up our old position once again, part of a whole. 35. Just as nature takes every obstacle, every impediment, and works around it, turns it to its purposes, incorporates it into itself, so, too, a rational being can turn each setback into raw material and use it to achieve its goal. 36. Don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Don't try to picture everything bad that could possibly happen. Stick with the situation at hand, and ask, why is this so unbearable? Why can't I endure it? You'll be embarrassed to answer. Then remind yourself that past and future have no power over you. Only the present, and even that can be minimized. Just mark off its limits. And if your mind tries to claim that it can't hold out against that, well, then, heap shame upon it. 37. Are Panthea or Pergamos still keeping watch at the tomb of Verus? Of course they aren't. Would the emperors know it if they were? And even if they knew, would it please them? And even if it did, would the mourners live forever? Were they, too, not fated to grow old and then die? 39. To the best of my judgment, when I look at the human character, I see no virtue placed there to counter justice. But I see one to counter pleasure, self-control. 40. Stop perceiving the pain you imagine and you'll remain completely unaffected. 41. For animate beings, harmful is whatever obstructs the operation of their senses or the fulfillment of what they intend. Anything that obstructs the operation of the mind is harmful. Do pain and pleasure have their hooks in you? Let the senses deal with it. Are there obstacles to your action? If you failed to reckon with the possibility, then that would harm you, as a rational being. But if you use common sense, you haven't been harmed or even obstructed. No one can obstruct the operations of the mind. Nothing can get at them, not fire or steel, not tyrants, not abuse, nothing. As long as it's a sphere. In perfect stillness. 42. I have no right to do myself an injury. Have I ever injured anyone else if I could avoid it? 43. People find pleasure in different ways. I find it in keeping my mind clear. In not turning away from people or the things that happen to them. In accepting and welcoming everything I see. In treating each thing as it deserves. 44. Give yourself a gift, the present moment. People out for posthumous fame forget that the generations to come will be the same annoying people they know now. And just as mortal. What does it matter to you if they say X about you, or think Y? 45. Is there any reason why my soul should suffer and be degraded, miserable, tense, huddled, frightened? How could there be? 47. External things are not the problem. It's your assessment of them. Which you can erase right now. If the problem is something in your own character, who's stopping you from setting your mind straight? And if it's that you're not doing something you think you should be, why not just do it? But there are insuperable obstacles. Then it's not a problem. The cause of your inaction lies outside you. But how can I go on living with that undone? Then depart, with a good conscience, as if you'd done it, embracing the obstacles too. 50. The cucumber is bitter? Then throw it out. There are brambles in the path? Then go around them. That's all you need to know. Nothing more. Don't demand to know why such things exist. Anyone who understands the world will laugh at you, just as a carpenter would if you seemed shocked at finding sawdust in his workshop. But the wonderful thing about its workmanship is how, faced with that limitation, it takes everything within it that seems broken, old and useless, transforms it into itself, and makes new things from it. So that it doesn't need material from any outside source, or anywhere to dispose of what's left over. It relies on itself for all it needs, space, material, and labor. 51. No carelessness in your actions. No confusion in your words. No imprecision in your thoughts. No retreating into your own soul, or trying to escape it. No overactivity. And that somehow cuts your mind off from clearness, and sanity, and self-control, and justice? Not a cistern but a perpetual spring. How? By working to win your freedom. Hour by hour. Through patience, honesty, humility. 52. Not to know what the world is to be ignorant of where you are. Not to know why it's here is to be ignorant of who you are. And what it is. Not to know any of this is to be ignorant of why you're here. 53. You want praise from people who kick themselves every 15 minutes, the approval of people who despise themselves. Is it a sign of self-respect to regret nearly everything you do? 54. To join ourselves not just to the air surrounding us, through breath, but to the reason that embraces all things, through thought. Reason is just as omnipresent, just as widely diffused in those who accept it as air is in those who breathe. 56. Other people's wills are as independent of mine as their breath and bodies. We may exist for the sake of one another, but our will rules its own domain. Otherwise the harm they do would cause harm to me. Which is not what God intended for my happiness to rest with someone else. 57. That's what the outpouring, the diffusion of thought should be like, not emptied out, but extended. And not striking at obstacles with fury and violence, or falling away before them, but holding its ground and illuminating what receives it. What doesn't transmit light creates its own darkness. 58. Fear of death is fear of what we may experience. Nothing at all, or something quite new. But if we experience nothing, we can experience nothing bad. And if our experience changes, then our existence will change with it change, but not cease. 59 people exist for one another. You can instruct or endure them. 60 An arrow has one motion and the mind another. Even when pausing, even when weighing conclusions, the mind is moving forward, toward its goal. 61 To enter others' minds and let them enter yours. Book 9. 1 Injustice is a kind of blasphemy. Nature designed rational beings for each other's sake, to help not harm one another, as they deserve. To transgress its will, then, is to blaspheme against the oldest of the gods. And to lie is to blaspheme against it too. Because nature means the nature of that which is. And that which is and that which is the case are closely linked, so that nature is synonymous with truth, the source of all true things. To lie deliberately is to blaspheme. The liar commits deceit, and thus injustice. And likewise to lie without realizing it. Because the involuntary liar disrupts the harmony of nature, its order. Nature gave him the resources to distinguish between true and false. And he neglected them, and now can't tell the difference. And to pursue pleasure as good, and flee from pain as evil, that too is blasphemous. But often lets the bad enjoy pleasure and the things that produce it, and makes the good suffer pain, and the things that produce pain. While if you pursue pleasure, you can hardly avoid wrongdoing, which is manifestly blasphemous. Some things nature is indifferent to, if it privileged one over the other it would hardly have created both. And if we want to follow nature, to be of one mind with it, we need to share its indifference. To privilege pleasure over pain, life over death, fame over anonymity is clearly blasphemous. Nature certainly doesn't. And when I say that nature is indifferent to them, I mean that they happen indifferently, at different times, to the things that exist and the things that come into being after them, through some ancient decree of providence, by laying down the principles of what was to come and determining the generative forces, existence and change, and their successive stages. To real good luck would be to abandon life without ever encountering dishonesty, or hypocrisy, or self-indulgence, or pride. But the next best voyage is to die when you've had enough. Or are you determined to lie down with evil? Hasn't experience even taught you that to avoid it like the plague? Because it is a plague, a mental cancer worse than anything caused by tainted air or an unhealthy climate. Diseases like that can only threaten your life, this one attacks your humanity. 3 Don't look down on death, but welcome it. It too is one of the things required by nature. Like youth and old age. Like growth and maturity. Like a new set of teeth, a beard, the first gray hair. Like sex and pregnancy and childbirth. Like all the other physical changes at each stage of life, our dissolution is no different. So this is how a thoughtful person should await death, not with indifference, not with impatience, not with disdain, but simply viewing it as one of the things that happen to us. Consider 2 things that should reconcile you to death: the nature of the things you'll leave behind you, and the kind of people you'll no longer be mixed up with. There's no need to feel resentment toward them. In fact, you should look out for their well-being, and be gentle with them, but keep in mind that everything you believe is meaningless to those you leave behind. Because that's all that could restrain us, if anything could, the only thing that could make us want to stay here, the chance to live with those who share our vision. But now, look how tiring it is, this cacophony we live in. Enough to make you say to death, come quickly. Before I start to forget myself, like them. For to do harm is to do yourself harm. To do an injustice is to do yourself an injustice, it degrades you. 5. And you can also commit injustice by doing nothing. 6 Objective judgment, now, at this very moment. Unselfish action, now, at this very moment. Willing acceptance now, at this very moment of all external events. That's all you need. 8 Animals without the logos are assigned the same soul, and those who have the logos share one to a rational one. Just as all earthly creatures share one earth. Just as we all see by the same light, and breathe the same air, all of us who see and breathe. 9 All things are drawn toward what is like them, if such a thing exists. And things that share an intelligent nature are just as prone to seek out what is like them. If not more so. Because their superiority in other ways is matched by their greater readiness to mix and mingle with their counterparts. Even in irrational beings we see swarms and herds, and nesting, and love not unlike ours. Because they do have souls, and the bonding instinct is found in a developed form, not something we see in plants, or stones, or trees. And it's still more developed in rational beings, with their states, friendships, families, groups, their treaties, and truces. And in those yet more developed there is a kind of unity even between separate things, the kind that we see in the stars. An advanced level of development can produce a sympathy even in things that are quite distinct. But look how things are now. The rational things are the only ones that have lost that sense of attraction, of convergence. Only there do we not see that intermingling. But however much they try to avoid it, there's no escaping. Concrete objects can pull free of the earth more easily than humans can escape humanity. 11. Convince them not to. If you can. And if not, remember, the capacity for patience was given us for a reason. The gods are patient with them too, and even help them to concrete things, health, money, fame. Such is the God's goodness. And yours, too, if you wanted. What's stopping you? 12. Work. Not to rouse pity, not to win sympathy or admiration. Only this. Activity. Stillness. As the logos of the state requires. 13. Today I escaped from anxiety. Or no, I discarded it, because it was within me, in my own perceptions not outside. 14. Known by long experience, limited in lifespan, debased in substance all of it. 15. Things wait outside us, hover at the door. They keep to themselves. Ask them who they are and they don't know, they can give no account of themselves. What accounts for them? The mind does. 16. Not being done to, but doing the source of good and bad for rational and political beings. Where their own goodness and badness is found not in being done to, but in doing. 18. Enter their minds, and you'll find the judges you're so afraid of and how judiciously they judge themselves. 20. Leave other people's mistakes where they lie. 21. When we cease from activity, or follow a thought to its conclusion, it's a kind of death. And it doesn't harm us. Think about your life, childhood, boyhood, youth, old age. Every transformation a kind of dying. Was that so terrible? Realize how many other deaths and transformations and endings there have been and ask yourself, was that so terrible? Then neither will the close of your life be its ending and transformation. 22. Go straight to the seat of intelligence, your own, the world's, your neighbor's. Your own to ground it in justice. The world's to remind yourself what it is that you're part of. Your neighbor's to distinguish ignorance from calculation. And recognize it as like yours. 23. You participate in a society by your existence. Then participate in its life through your actions, all your actions. Any action not directed toward a social end, directly or indirectly, is a disturbance to your life, an obstacle to wholeness, a source of dissension. Like the man in the assembly, a faction to himself, always out of step with the majority. 24. Childish tantrums, children's games, spirits carrying corpses. Odysseus in the underworld saw more real life. 25. Identify its purpose, what makes it what it is, and examine that. Ignore its concrete form. Then calculate the length of time that such a thing was meant to last. 26. Endless suffering, all from not allowing the mind to do its job. Enough. 27. When you face someone's insults, hatred, whatever. Look at his soul. Get inside him. Look at what sort of person he is. You'll find you don't need to strain to impress him. But you do have to wish him well. He's your closest relative. The gods assist him just as they do you by signs and dreams and every other way to get the things he wants. 28. The world's cycles never change up and down, from age to age. One way or another, atoms or unity. If it's God, all is well. If it's arbitrary, don't imitate it. Think about them, the waves of change and alteration, endlessly breaking. And see our brief mortality for what it is. 29. The design of the world is like a flood, sweeping all before it. The foolishness of them little men busy with affairs of state, with philosophy, or what they think of as philosophy. Nothing but phlegm and mucus. Well, then what? Do what nature demands. Get a move on if you have it in you, and don't worry whether anyone will give you credit for it. Be satisfied with even the smallest progress, and treat the outcome of it all as unimportant. Who can change their minds? And without that change, what is there but groaning, slavery, a pretense of obedience? The task of philosophy is modest and straightforward. Don't tempt me to presumption. 30. That to be remembered is worthless. Like fame. Like everything. 31. Indifference to external events. And a commitment to justice in your own acts. Which means, thought and action resulting in the common good. What you were born to do. 32. You can discard most of the junk that clutters your mind, things that exist only there, and clear out space for yourself. By comprehending the scale of the world. By contemplating infinite time. By thinking of the speed with which things change, each part of everything, the narrow space between our birth and death, the infinite time before, the equally unbounded time that follows. 33. All that you see will soon have vanished, and those who see it vanish will vanish themselves, and the ones who reached old age have no advantage over the untimely dead. 34. What their minds are like. What they work at. What evokes their love and admiration. Imagine their souls stripped bare. And their vanity. To suppose that their disdain could harm anyone or their praise help them. 35. To decompose is to be recomposed. That things happen for the worst and always will, that the gods have no power to regulate them, and the world is condemned to never-ending evil. How can you say that? 37 Enough of this wretched, whining monkey life. What's the matter? Is any of this new? What is it you find surprising? The purpose? Look at it. The material? Look at that. That's all there is. And the gods? Well, you could try being simpler, gentler. Even now. 100 years or 3. No difference. 38 If they've injured you, then they're the ones who suffer for it. But have they? 39 So why feel anxiety? Say to your mind, are you dead? Damaged? Brutal? Dishonest? Are you one of the herd? Or grazing like one? 40 Either the gods have power or they don't. If they don't, why pray? If they do, then why not pray for something else instead of for things to happen or not to happen? Pray not to feel fear, or desire, or grief. If the gods can do anything, they can surely do that for us. But those are things the gods left up to me. Then isn't it better to do what's up to you like a free man than to be passively controlled by what isn't, like a slave or beggar? And what makes you think the gods don't care about what's up to us? Start praying like this and you'll see. Not some way to sleep with her but a way to stop wanting to. Not some way to get rid of him but a way to stop trying. Not some way to save my child but a way to lose your fear. Redirect your prayers like that, and watch what happens. 41. Epicurus, during my illness, my conversations were not about my physical state. I did not waste my visitors' time with things of that sort, but went on discussing philosophy, and concentrated on one point in particular, how the mind can participate in the sensations of the body and yet maintain its serenity, and focus on its own well-being. Nor did I let my doctors strut about like grandees. I went on living my life the way it should be lived. Like that. In illness or any other situation. Not to let go of philosophy, no matter what happens, not to bandy words with crackpots and Philistines. Good rules for any philosopher. Concentrate on what you're doing, and what you're doing it with. 42. When you run up against someone else's shamelessness, ask yourself this, is a world without shamelessness possible? No. Then don't ask the impossible. There have to be shameless people in the world. This is one of them. The same for someone vicious or untrustworthy, or with any other defect. Remembering that the whole class has to exist will make you more tolerant of its members. Another useful point to bear in mind, what qualities has nature given us to counter that defect? As an antidote to unkindness it gave us kindness. And other qualities to balance other flaws. And when others stray off course, you can always try to set them straight, because every wrongdoer is doing something wrong, doing something the wrong way. And how does it injure you anyway? You'll find that none of the people you're upset about has done anything that could do damage to your mind. But that's all that harm or injury could mean. Yes, boorish people do boorish things. What's strange or unheard of about that? Isn't it yourself you should reproach for not anticipating that they'd act this way? The Logos gave you the means to see it that a given person would act a given way but you paid no attention. And now you're astonished that he's gone and done it. So when you call someone untrustworthy or ungrateful, turn the reproach on yourself. It was you who did wrong. By assuming that someone with those traits deserved your trust. Or by doing them a favor and expecting something in return, instead of looking to the action itself for your reward. What else did you expect from helping someone out? Isn't it enough that you've done what your nature demands? You want a salary for it too? As if your eyes expected a reward for seeing, or your feet for walking. That's what they were made for. By doing what they were designed to do, they're performing their function. Whereas humans were made to help others. And when we do help others or help them to do something, we're doing what we were designed for. We perform our function. Book 10. 1 To my soul. Are you ever going to achieve goodness? Ever going to be simple, whole, and naked as plain to see as the body that contains you? Know what an affectionate and loving disposition would feel like? Ever be fulfilled, ever stop desiring, lusting and longing for people and things to enjoy? Or for more time to enjoy them? Or for some other place or country a more temperate clime? Or for people easier to get along with? And instead be satisfied with what you have, and accept the present, all of it? Will you ever take your stand as a fellow citizen with gods and human beings, blaming no one, deserving no one's censure? To focus on what nature demands, as if you were governed by that alone. Then do that, and accept it, unless your nature as a living being would be degraded by it. Then focus on what that nature demands, and accept that too, unless your nature as a rational being would be degraded by it. Rational also implies civic. Follow these guidelines and don't waste time on anything else. 3. Everything that happens is either endurable or not. If it's endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. If it's unendurable, then stop complaining. Your destruction will mean its end as well. Just remember, you can endure anything your mind can make endurable, by treating it as in your interest to do so. In your interest, or in your nature. 4. If they've made a mistake, correct them gently and show them where they went wrong. If you can't do that, then the blame lies with you. Or no one. 5. Whatever happens to you has been waiting to happen since the beginning of time. The twining strands of fate wove both of them together, your own existence and the things that happen to you. 6. Whether it's atoms or nature, the first thing to be said is this: I am a part of a world controlled by nature. Secondly, that I have a relationship with other, similar parts. And with that in mind, I have no right, as a part, to complain about what is assigned me by the whole. Because what benefits the whole can't harm the parts, and the whole does nothing that doesn't benefit it. That's a trait shared by all natures, but the nature of the world is defined by a second characteristic as well: no outside force can compel it to cause itself harm. And because of my relationship to other parts, I will do nothing selfish, but aim instead to join them, to direct my every action toward what benefits us all and to avoid what doesn't. As you might expect a citizen's life to go, one whose actions serve his fellow citizens, and who embraces the community's decree. 7. If the process is harmful to the parts and unavoidable, then it's hard to see how the whole can run smoothly, with parts of it passing from one state to another, all of them built only to be destroyed in different ways. Does nature set out to cause its own components harm, and make them vulnerable to it, indeed, predestined to it? Or is it oblivious to what goes on? Neither one seems very plausible. But suppose we throw out nature and explain these things through inherent properties. It would still be absurd to say that the individual things in the world are inherently prone to change, and at the same time be astonished at it or complain on the grounds that it was happening contrary to nature. And least of all when things return to the state from which they came. Because our elements are either simply dispersed, or are subject to a kind of gravitation, the solid portions being pulled toward earth, and what is ethereal drawn into the air, until they're absorbed into the universal logos, which is subject to periodic conflagrations, or renewed through continual change. And don't imagine either that those elements, the solid ones and the ethereal, are with us from our birth. Their influx took place yesterday, or the day before, from the food we ate, the air we breathed. And that's what changes, not the person your mother gave birth to. 8 epithets for yourself: upright, modest, straightforward, sane, cooperative, disinterested. Try not to exchange them for others. And if you should forfeit them, set about getting them back. Keep in mind that sanity means understanding things, each individual thing, for what they are, and not losing the thread. And cooperation means accepting what nature assigns you, accepting it willingly. And disinterest means that the intelligence should rise above the movements of the flesh, the rough and the smooth alike. Should rise above fame, above death, and everything like them. If you maintain your claim to these epithets without caring if others apply them to you or not, you'll become a new person, living a new life. To keep on being the person that you've been, to keep being mauled and degraded by the life you're living, is to be devoid of sense and much too fond of life. Set sail, then, with this handful of epithets to guide you. And steer a steady course, if you can. And if you feel yourself adrift as if you've lost control, then hope for the best, and put in somewhere where you can regain it. Or leave life altogether, not in anger, but matter-of-factly, straightforwardly, without arrogance, in the knowledge that you've at least done that much with your life. And as you try to keep these epithets in mind, it will help you a great deal to keep the gods in mind as well. What they want is not flattery, but for rational things to be like them. For figs to do what figs were meant to do, and dogs, and bees, and people. 9 Operatics, combat and confusion. Sloth and servility. Every day they blot out those sacred principles of yours which you daydream thoughtlessly about, or just let slide. Your actions and perceptions need to aim at accomplishing practical ends, at the exercise of thought, at maintaining a confidence founded on understanding, an unobtrusive confidence hidden in plain sight. When will you let yourself enjoy straightforwardness, seriousness, or understanding individual things, their nature and substance, their place in the world, their lifespan, their composition, who can possess them, whose they are to give and to receive? 10 Spiders are proud of catching flies, men of catching hares, fish in a net, boars, bears, sarmatians. Criminal psychology. 11 How they all change into one another. Acquire the ability to see that. Apply it constantly, use it to train yourself. Nothing is as conducive to spiritual growth. 11a. He has stripped away his body, and realizing that at some point soon he will have to abandon mankind and leave all this behind, has dedicated himself to serving justice in all he does, and nature in all that happens. What people say or think about him, or how they treat him, isn't something he worries about. Only these 2 questions: is what he's doing now the right thing to be doing? Does he accept and welcome what he's been assigned? He has stripped away all other occupations, all other tasks. He wants only to travel a straight path to God, by way of law. 12. Why all this guesswork? You can see what needs to be done. If you can see the road, follow it cheerfully, without turning back. If not, hold up and get the best advice you can. If anything gets in the way, forge on ahead, making good use of what you have on hand, sticking to what seems right. The best goal to achieve, and the one we fall short of when we fail. 12a. To follow the logos in all things is to be relaxed and energetic, joyful and serious at once. 13. When you wake up, ask yourself. Does it make any difference to you if other people blame you for doing what's right? It makes no difference. Have you forgotten what the people who are so vociferous in praise or blame of others are like as they sleep and eat? Forgotten their behavior, their fears, their desires, their thefts and depredations, not physical ones, but those committed by what should be highest in them? What creates, when it chooses, loyalty, humility, truth, order, well-being? 14. Nature gives and nature takes away. Anyone with sense and humility will tell her, give and take as you please, not out of defiance, but out of obedience and goodwill. 15. Only a short time left. Live as if you were alone out in the wilderness. No difference between here and there, the city that you live in is the world. Let people see someone living naturally, and understand what that means. Let them kill him if they can't stand it. Better than living like this. 16. To stop talking about what the good man is like, and just be one. 17. Continual awareness of all time and space, of the size and lifespan of the things around us. A grapeseed in infinite space. A half twist of a corkscrew against eternity. 19. How they act when they eat and sleep and mate and defecate and all the rest. Then when they order and exult, or rage and thunder from on high. And yet, just consider the things they submitted to a moment ago, and the reasons for it and the things they'll submit to again before very long. 21. The earth knows longing for the rain, the sky knows longing. And the world longs to create what will come to be. I tell it I share your longing. And isn't that what we mean by inclined to happen? 22. Possibilities. I. To keep on living, you should be used to it by now. 2. To end it, it was your choice, after all. 3. To die, having met your obligations. Those are the only options. Reason for optimism. 24. My mind. What is it? What am I making of it? What am I using it for? Is it empty of thought? Isolated and torn loose from those around it? Melted into flesh and blended with it, so that it shares its urges? 25. When a slave runs away from his master, we call him a fugitive slave. But the law of nature is a master too, and to break it is to become a fugitive. To feel grief, anger, or fear is to try to escape from something decreed by the ruler of all things, now or in the past or in the future. And that ruler is law, which governs what happens to each of us. To feel grief or anger or fear is to become a fugitive from justice. 26. He deposits his sperm and leaves. And then a force not his takes it and goes to work, and creates a child. This. From that. Or. He pours food down his throat. And then a force not his takes it and creates sensations, desires, daily life, physical strength, and so much else besides. To look at these things going on silently and see the force that drives them. As we see the force that pushes things and pulls them. Not with our eyes, but just as clearly. 27. To bear in mind constantly that all of this has happened before. And will happen again, the same plot from beginning to end, the identical staging. All just the same. Only the people different. 28. People who feel hurt and resentment, picture them as the pig at the sacrifice, kicking and squealing all the way. Like the man alone in his bed, silently weeping over the chains that bind us. That everything has to submit. But only rational beings can do so voluntarily. 29. Stop whatever you're doing for a moment and ask yourself, am I afraid of death because I won't be able to do this anymore? 30. When faced with people's bad behavior, turn around and ask when you have acted like that. When you saw money as a good, or pleasure, or social position. Your anger will subside as soon as you recognize that they acted under compulsion. What else could they do? Or remove the compulsion, if you can. 31. When you look at yourself, see any of the emperors. And the same with everyone else. Then let it hit you, where are they now? Nowhere. Or wherever. That way you'll see human life for what it is. Smoke. Nothing. Especially when you recall that once things alter they cease to exist through all the endless years to come. Then why such turmoil? To live your brief life rightly, isn't that enough? The raw material you're missing, the opportunities. What is any of this but training for your logos, in life observed accurately, scientifically? So keep at it, until it's fully digested. As a strong stomach digests whatever it eats. As a blazing fire takes whatever you throw on it, and makes it light and flame. 32 That no one can say truthfully that you are not a straightforward or honest person. That anyone who thinks that believes a falsehood. The responsibility is all yours, no one can stop you from being honest or straightforward. Simply resolve not to go on living if you aren't. It would be contrary to the logos. 33 Given the material we're made of, what's the sanest thing that we can do or say? Whatever it may be, you can do or say it. Don't pretend that anything's stopping you. You'll never stop complaining until you feel the same pleasure that the hedonist gets from self-indulgence only from doing what's proper to human beings as far as circumstances inherent or fortuitous allow. Enjoyment means doing as much of what your nature requires as you can. And you can do that anywhere. A privilege not granted to a cylinder to determine its own action. In all other entities, when anything bad happens to them, it affects them for the worse. Whereas here a person is improved by it, if I can put it like that, and we admire him for reacting as a person should. And keep in mind that nothing can harm one of nature's citizens except what harms the city he belongs to. And nothing harms that city except what harms its law. And there is no so-called misfortune that can do that. So long as the law is safe, so is the city and the citizen. 34 If you've immersed yourself in the principles of truth, the briefest, most random reminder is enough to dispel all fear and pain. Leaves that the wind drives earthward, such are the generations of men. None of us have much time. And yet you act as if things were eternal the way you fear and long for them. Before long, darkness. And whoever buries you mourned in their turn. 35 A healthy pair of eyes should see everything that can be seen and not say, no. Too bright. Which is a symptom of ophthalmia. A healthy sense of hearing or smell should be prepared for any sound or scent. A healthy stomach should have the same reaction to all foods, as a mill to what it grinds. So too a healthy mind should be prepared for anything. The one that keeps saying, are my children all right, or everyone must approve of me is like eyes that can only stand pale colors, or teeth that can handle only mush. 36. It doesn't matter how good a life you've led. There'll still be people standing around the bed who will welcome the sad event. Even with the intelligent and good. Won't there be someone thinking finally to be through with that old school teacher? Even though he never said anything, you could always feel him judging you. And that's for a good man. How many traits do you have that would make a lot of people glad to be rid of you? Remember that, when the time comes, you'll be less reluctant to leave if you can tell yourself, this is the sort of life I'm leaving. Even the people around me, the ones I spent so much time fighting for, praying over, caring about, even they want me gone, in hopes that it will make their own lives easier. How could anyone stand a longer stay here? And yet, don't leave angry with them. Be true to who you are, caring, sympathetic, kind. And not as if you were being torn away from life. But the way it is when someone dies peacefully, how the soul is released from the body, that's how you should leave them. It was nature that bound you to them that tied the knot. And nature that now unties you. I am released from those around me. Not dragged against my will, but unresisting. There are things that nature demands. And this is one of them. 37 Learn to ask of all actions, why are they doing that? Starting with your own. 38 Remember that what pulls the strings is within, hidden from us. Is speech, is life, is the person. Don't conceive of the rest as part of it, the skin that contains it, and the accompanying organs. Which are tools like a carpenter's axe, except that they're attached to us from birth, and are no more use without what moves and holds them still than the weaver's shuttle, the writer's pencil, the driver's whip. Book 11. 1 Characteristics of the rational soul. Self-perception, self-examination, and the power to make of itself whatever it wants. It reaches its intended goal, no matter where the limit of its life is set. But at any point, no matter which one you pick, it has fulfilled its mission, done its work completely. So that it can say, I have what I came for. It surveys the world and the empty space around it, and the way it's put together. It delves into the endlessness of time to extend its grasp and comprehension of the periodic births and rebirths that the world goes through. It knows that those who come after us will see nothing different, that those who came before us saw no more than we do, and that anyone with 40 years behind him and eyes in his head has seen both past and future both alike. Also, affection for its neighbors. Truthfulness. Humility. Not to place anything above itself, which is characteristic of law as well. No difference here between the logos of rationality and that of justice. 3 The resolute soul. Resolute in separation from the body. And then in dissolution or fragmentation or continuity. But the resolution has to be the result of its own decision, not just in response to outside forces like the Christians. It has to be considered and serious, persuasive to other people. Without dramatics. 4 Have I done something for the common good? Then I share in the benefits. To stay centered on that. Not to give up. 5 And your profession. Goodness. And how is that to be achieved, except by thought about the world, about the nature of people? 6. First, tragedies. To remind us of what can happen, and that it happens inevitably, and if something gives you pleasure on that stage, it shouldn't cause you anger on this one. You realize that these are things we all have to go through, and have to endure them. Then, after tragedy, old comedy, instructive in its frankness, its plain speaking designed to puncture pretensions. Diogenes used the same tactic for similar ends. Then consider the middle, and later the new, comedy and what it aimed at. Gradually degenerating into mere realism and empty technique. There are undeniably good passages, even in those writers, but what was the point of it all? The script and staging alike. 7. It stares you in the face. No role is so well suited to philosophy as the one you happen to be in right now. 8. A branch cut away from the branch beside it is simultaneously cut away from the whole tree. So too a human being separated from another is cut loose from the whole community. The branch is cut off by someone else. But people cut themselves off through hatred, through rejection, and don't realize that they're cutting themselves off from the whole civic enterprise. Except that we can reattach ourselves and become once more components of the whole. But if the rupture is too often repeated, it makes the severed part hard to reconnect, and to restore. You can see the difference between the branch that's been there since the beginning, remaining on the tree and growing with it, and the one that's been cut off and grafted back. One trunk, two minds. As the gardeners put it. 9. They can't keep you from doing what's healthy, don't let them stop you from putting up with them either. Take care on both counts. Not just sound judgments, solid actions, tolerance as well, for those who try to obstruct us or give us trouble in other ways. Because anger, too, is weakness, as much as breaking down and giving up the struggle. Both are deserters, the man who breaks and runs, and the one who lets himself be alienated from his fellow humans. 10. The natural can never be inferior to the artificial, art imitates nature, not the reverse. In which case, that most highly developed and comprehensive nature itself cannot fall short of artifice in its craftsmanship. Now, all the arts move from lower goals to higher ones. Won't nature do the same? Hence justice. Which is the source of all the other virtues. For how could we do what justice requires if we are distracted by things that don't matter, if we are naive, gullible, inconstant? 11. It's the pursuit of these things, and your attempts to avoid them, that leave you in such turmoil. And yet they aren't seeking you out, you are the one seeking them. Suspend judgment about them. And at once they will lie still, and you will be freed from fleeing and pursuing. 12. The soul as a sphere in equilibrium, not grasping at things beyond it or retreating inward. Not fragmenting outward, not sinking back on itself, but ablaze with light and looking at the truth, without and within. 13. Someone despises me. That's their problem. Mine, not to do or say anything despicable. Someone hates me. Their problem. Mine, to be patient and cheerful with everyone, including them. Ready to show them their mistake. Not spitefully, or to show off my own self-control, but in an honest, upright way. That's what we should be like inside, and never let the gods catch us feeling anger or resentment. As long as you do what's proper to your nature, and accept what the world's nature has in store, as long as you work for others' good, by any and all means. What is there that can harm you? 14. They flatter one another out of contempt, and their desire to rule one another makes them bow and scrape. 15. The despicable phoniness of people who say, listen, I'm going to level with you here. What does that mean? It shouldn't even need to be said. It should be obvious, written in block letters on your forehead. It should be audible in your voice, visible in your eyes, like a lover who looks into your face and takes in the whole story at a glance. A straightforward, honest person should be like someone who stinks, when you're in the same room with him, you know it. But false straightforwardness is like a knife in the back. False friendship is the worst. Avoid it at all costs. If you're honest and straightforward and mean well, it should show in your eyes. It should be unmistakable. 16. To live a good life. We have the potential for it. If we can learn to be indifferent to what makes no difference. This is how we learn, by looking at each thing, both the parts and the whole. Keeping in mind that none of them can dictate how we perceive it. They don't impose themselves on us. They hover before us, unmoving. It is we who generate the judgments, inscribing them on ourselves. And we don't have to. We could leave the page blank, and if a mark slips through, erase it instantly. And why is it so hard when things go against you? Work out what your own nature requires, and aim at that, even if it brings you no glory. None of us is forbidden to pursue our own good. 18. My relationship to them. That we came into the world for the sake of one another. I came into it to be their guardian. 2. What they're like eating, in bed, etc. How driven they are by their beliefs. How proud they are of what they do. 3. That if they're right to do this, then you have no right to complain. And if they aren't, then they do it involuntarily, out of ignorance. Because all souls are prevented from treating others as they deserve, just as they are kept from truth, unwillingly. Which is why they resent being called unjust, or arrogant, or greedy, any suggestion that they aren't good neighbors. For that you've made enough mistakes yourself. You're just like them. Even if there are some you've avoided, you have the potential. Even if cowardice has kept you from them. Or fear of what people would say. Or some equally bad reason. V. That you don't know for sure it is a mistake. A lot of things are means to some other end. You have to know an awful lot before you can judge other people's actions with real understanding. 6. When you lose your temper, or even feel irritated, that human life is very short. Before long all of us will be laid out side by side. 7. That it's not what they do that bothers us, that's a problem for their minds, not ours. It's our own misperceptions. Discard them. Be willing to give up thinking of this as a catastrophe. And your anger is gone. You've suffered no disgrace. Unless disgrace is the only thing that can hurt you, you're doomed to commit innumerable offenses to become a thief, or heaven only knows what else. 8. How much more damage anger and grief do than the things that cause them. 9. That kindness is invincible, provided it's sincere, not ironic or an act. What can even the most vicious person do if you keep treating him with kindness and gently set him straight if you get the chance, correcting him cheerfully at the exact moment that he's trying to do you harm? No, no, my friend. That isn't what we're here for. It isn't me who's harmed by that. It's you. And show him, gently and without pointing fingers, that it's so. Don't do it sardonically or meanly, but affectionately with no hatred in your heart. And not ex cathedra or to impress third parties, but speaking directly. Even if there are other people around. And along with not getting angry at others, try not to pander either. Both are forms of selfishness, both of them will do you harm. When you start to lose your temper, remember, there's nothing manly about rage. It's courtesy and kindness that define a human being and a man. That's who possesses strength and nerves and guts, not the angry winners. To react like that brings you closer to impassivity and so to strength. Pain is the opposite of strength, and so is anger. And one more thought, from Apollo. X. That to expect bad people not to injure others is crazy. It's to ask the impossible. And to let them behave like that to other people but expect them to exempt you is arrogant, the act of a tyrant. 19. 4 habits of thought to watch for, and erase from your mind when you catch them. Tell yourself. This thought is unnecessary. This one is destructive to the people around you. This wouldn't be what you really think, to say what you don't think, the definition of absurdity. That the more divine part of you has been beaten and subdued by the degraded mortal part, the body, and its stupid self-indulgence. 20. Your spirit and the fire contained within you are drawn by their nature upward. But they comply with the world's designs and submit to being mingled here below. And the elements of earth and water in you are drawn by their nature downward. But are forced to rise, and take up a position not their own. So even the elements obey the world when ordered and compelled, and man their stations until the signal to abandon them arrives. 21. If you don't have a consistent goal in life, you can't live it in a consistent way. There is no common benchmark for all the things that people think are good except for a few, the ones that affect us all. So the goal should be a common one, a civic one. If you direct all your energies toward that, your actions will be consistent. And so will you. 23. Socrates used to call popular beliefs the monsters under the bed, only useful for frightening children with. 24. At festivals the Spartans put their guest seats in the shade, but sat themselves down anywhere. 27. The Pythagoreans tell us to look at the stars at daybreak. To remind ourselves how they complete the tasks assigned them, always the same tasks, the same way. And their order, purity, nakedness. Stars wear no concealment. 28. Socrates dressed in a towel, the times Antipa took his cloak and went out. The friends who were embarrassed and avoided him when they saw him dressed like that, and what Socrates said to them. 29. Mastery of reading and writing requires a master. Still more so life. 33. Stupidity is expecting figs in winter, or children in old age. 34. As you kiss your son good night, says Epictetus, whisper to yourself, he may be dead in the morning. Don't tempt fate, you say. By talking about a natural event? Is fate tempted when we speak of grain being reaped? 36. No thefts of free will reported. Epictetus. 37. We need to master the art of acquiescence. We need to pay attention to our impulses, making sure they don't go unmoderated, that they benefit others, that they're worthy of us. We need to steer clear of desire in any form and not try to avoid what's beyond our control. 38. This is not a debate about just anything, he said, but about sanity itself. 39. Socrates, what do you want, rational minds or irrational ones? Rational ones. Healthy or sick? Healthy. Then work to obtain them. We already have. Then why all this squabbling? Book 12. 1. Everything you're trying to reach by taking the long way round you could have right now, this moment. If you'd only stop thwarting your own attempts. If you'd only let go of the past, entrust the future to providence, and guide the present toward reverence and justice. Reverence, so you'll accept what you're allotted. Nature intended it for you, and you for it. Justice, so that you'll speak the truth, frankly and without evasions, and act as you should and as other people deserve. Don't let anything deter you, other people's misbehavior, your own misperceptions, what people will say. No longer an alien in your own land. No longer shocked by everyday events as if they were unheard of aberrations. No longer at the mercy of this, or that. 3. Your 3 components, body, breath, mind. 2 are yours in trust, to the third alone you have clear title. If you can cut your mind free of what other people do and say, of what you've said or done, of the things that you're afraid will happen, and what the whirling chaos sweeps in from outside, so that the mind is freed from fate, brought to clarity, and lives life on its own recognizance, doing what's right, accepting what happens, and speaking the truth. If you can cut free of impressions that cling to the mind, free of the future and the past, can make yourself, as Empedocles says, a sphere rejoicing in its perfect stillness, and concentrate on living what can be lived, which means the present. Then you can spend the time you have left in tranquility, and in kindness, and at peace with the spirit within you. 4. It never ceases to amaze me, we all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. 5. How is it that the gods arranged everything with such skill, such care for our well-being, and somehow overlooked one thing, that certain people, in fact, the best of them, the gods' own partners, the ones whose piety and good works brought them closest to the divine, that these people, when they die, should cease to exist forever? Utterly vanished. So from the fact that they didn't, if that's the case, we can conclude that it was inappropriate. Surely you can see yourself that to ask the question is to challenge the gods. Fairness. And why would you be bringing in fairness unless the gods are, in fact, fair and absolutely so? And if they are, how could they have carelessly overlooked something so unfair, so illogical in setting up the world? 6. Practice even what seems impossible. The left hand is useless at almost everything, for lack of practice. But it guides the reins better than the right. From practice. 8. To see the causes of things stripped bare. The aim of actions. Pain. Pleasure. Death. Fame. Who is responsible for our own restlessness? That no one obstructs us. That it's all in how you perceive it. 9. The student as boxer, not fencer. The fencer's weapon is picked up and put down again. The boxer's is part of him. All he has to do is clench his fist. 10. To see things as they are. Substance, cause and purpose. 14. Fatal necessity, an inescapable order. Or benevolent providence. Or confusion, random and indirect. If it's an inescapable necessity, why resist it? If it's providence, and admits of being worshipped, then try to be worthy of God's aid. If it's confusion and anarchy, then be grateful that on this raging sea you have a mind to guide you. And if the storm should carry you away, let it carry off flesh, breath, and all the rest, but not the mind, which can't be swept away. 15. The lamp shines until it is put out, without losing its gleam, and yet in you it all gutters out so early: truth, justice, self-control. 16. When someone seems to have injured you, keep in mind that he's already been tried and convicted by himself. That to expect a bad person not to harm others is like expecting fig trees not to secrete juice, babies not to cry, horses not to neigh, the inevitable not to happen. What else could they do with that sort of character? If you're still angry, then get to work on that. 17. If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. Let your intention be. 18. At all times, look at the thing itself, the thing behind the appearance, and unpack it by analysis. Cause, substance, purpose, and the length of time it exists. 19. It's time you realized that you have something in you more powerful and miraculous than the things that affect you and make you dance like a puppet. What's in my thoughts at this moment? Fear, jealousy, desire, feelings like that. 20. To undertake nothing, I at random or without a purpose. 2. For any reason but the common good. 21. Everything's destiny is to change, to be transformed, to perish, so that new things can be born. 22. It's all in how you perceive it. You're in control. You can dispense with misperception at will, like rounding the point. Serenity, total calm, safe anchorage. 23. A given action that stops when it's supposed to is none the worse for stopping, nor the person engaged in it either. So too with the succession of actions we call life. If it ends when it's supposed to, it's none the worse for that. And the person who comes to the end of the line has no cause for complaint. The time and stopping point are set by nature, our own nature, in some cases, death from old age, or nature as a whole. The end of life is not an evil, it doesn't disgrace us. Why should we be ashamed of an involuntary act that injures no one? It's a good thing scheduled by the world, promoting it, promoted by it. This is how we become godlike, following God's path, and reason's goals. 24 3 things, essential at all times. A. Your own actions, that they're not arbitrary or different from what abstract justice would do. B. External events, that they happen randomly or by design. You can't complain about chance. You can't argue with providence. 2. What all things are like, from the planting of the seed to the quickening of life, and from its quickening to its relinquishment. 3. That if you were suddenly lifted up and could see life and its variety from a vast height, and at the same time all the things around you, in the sky and beyond it, you'd see how pointless it is. And no matter how often you saw it, it would be the same life forms, the same lifespan. Arrogance. About this? 25. Throw out your misperceptions and you'll be fine. And who's stopping you from throwing them out? 26. To be angry at something means you've forgotten that everything that happens is natural. That the responsibility is theirs, not yours. That whatever happens has always happened, and always will, and is happening at this very moment, everywhere. What links one human being to all humans, not blood, or birth, but mind. That nothing belongs to anyone. Children, body, life itself, all of them come from that same source. That it's all how you choose to see things. That the present is all we have to live in. Or to lose. 27. Constantly run down the list of those who felt intense anger at something, the most famous, the most unfortunate, the most hated, the most whatever. And ask, where is all that now? Smoke, dust, legend, obsession, and arrogance. And how trivial the things we want so passionately are. And how much more philosophical it would be to take what we're given and show uprightness, self-control, obedience to God, without making a production of it. There's nothing more insufferable than people who boast about their own humility. 28. People ask, have you ever seen the gods you worship? How can you be sure they exist? Answers. I just look around you. 2. I've never seen my soul either. And yet I revere it. Exist and I revere them from having felt their power, over and over. 29. Salvation, to see each thing for what it is, its nature and its purpose. To do only what is right, say only what is true, without holding back. What else could it be but to live life fully, to pay out goodness like the rings of a chain, without the slightest gap. 30. Singular, not plural. Substance. Though split into 1,000 forms, variously shaped. Life. Though distributed among 1,000 different natures with their individual limitations. Intelligence. Even if it seems to be divided. But intelligence is uniquely drawn toward what is akin to it, and joins with it inseparably, in shared awareness. 31. What is it you want? To keep on breathing? What about feeling? Desiring? Growing? Ceasing to grow? Using your voice? Thinking? Which of them seems worth having? But if you can do without them all, then continue to follow the Logos, and God. To the end. To prize those other things, to grieve because death deprives us of them, is an obstacle. 32. The fraction of infinity, of that vast abyss of time, allotted to each of us. Absorbed in an instant into eternity. The fraction of all substance, and all spirit. The fraction of the whole earth you crawl about on. 33. How the mind conducts itself. It all depends on that. All the rest is within its power, or beyond its control, corpses and smoke. 34. An incentive to treat death as unimportant, even people whose only morality is pain and pleasure can manage that much. 35. If you make ripeness alone your good. If a few actions more or less, governed by the right Logos, are merely a few more or less. If it makes no difference whether you look at the world for this long or that long. Then death shouldn't scare you. 36. To be sent away from life, by nature, who first invited you, and why is that so terrible? But I've only gotten through 3 acts. Yes. This will be a drama in 3 acts, the length fixed by the power that directed your creation, and now directs your dissolution. Neither was yours to determine. So make your exit with grace, the same grace shown to you.